From the banks of Dewey Lake, it's the Dewey Pod Monster.
Welcome back. My name is John, and this is the Dewey Pod Monster Podcast. This is your weekly podcast about consumption. We are proud members of the You Run Podcast Network, and you can find all of our old episodes, previous episodes, and this episode, future episodes at yourunpodcast.com, as well as all the other great shows on the You Run Podcast Network. With me this week is the host of the Dewey Pod Monster Podcast, and his name is Sean. And Sean, how are you this wonderful evening?
I feel like I'm missing you. I've spent so much time with you the last couple days. It's weird to not be hanging around.
I know we should have just recorded when you were here one of the days this weekend.
Maybe. That would have been pretty cool. We've never done something where we're actually in the same room.
Well,
I mean,
not with a
not recorded something.
Standpoint.
Yeah. I mean, not for the podcast.
Well,
at least.
that's not, I was going to say, that's not entirely true. There's a couple of videos on Draft Therapy that we're both on.
Yeah. In the same room at the same table.
Yeah. Or a bus. So, Sean, it's been a couple weeks since we last went over the fine things that we've been watching. What have you been watching over the last several days?
You know, it has been a long time, but I haven't really watched that much. I mean, I'm going to say some words here, and it's going to sound like I've watched a lot of stuff, but I'm not going to go into much detail because, you know, why fucking bother? I've been watching Alone Season 11. That started 3 episodes so far as the time of this recording.
It's one of your Survivor shows, right?
Yeah, it's outdoorsman-y stuff where they live in the wilderness. I don't like, I mean, hey, I'm all about, nobody take this the wrong way. Nobody listening take this the wrong way. I love the 4th of July, but I don't like when the 4th of July interrupts shows that I watch. So Alone airs on Thursdays, so there was no new Alone this week, so I was a little disappointed. I've been watching season 4 of The Boys. I have to say that The Boys is one of my least favorite show names to say out loud. It just sounds like, oh, I've been watching The Boys.
Sounds a little creepy.
Yeah, it does. Hey, what are you watching? The Boys. So I've been watching The Boys, season 4. I think they have probably 5 episodes, and I've watched the first 3. I was on vacation since we recorded last. When I was on my vacation, I watched The Perfect Wife, which is a documentary on Hulu about Sherry Papini, that woman in California.
I watched a video called The Perfect Wife, too, but it wasn't
about Shirley Papini.
It was on a whole different website.
Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah.
That was pretty interesting. It's all, I guess, that they're making a documentary from her perspective now. If you don't, did you know the whole story about Sherry Papini and going missing for, I think she was gone 22 days or something in California, and her phone was left behind, her keys were left behind, and when she was rescued or when they found her, she said that she had been kidnapped by 2 Mexican women whose names they went by were Smegma and Taint. That were the names of the Spanish women.
I have not heard this, but I like the names.
It's an interesting documentary. It's a little slow, but I'm not going to spoil it. But, you know, you should watch it if you're interested in true crime and something that happened that's just so stranger than fiction, I guess is a way to put it, because just the shit that happens is out there. I also watched a documentary, I think it was on Tubi, called 26 by 34, and it is a documentary basically covering the movie poster art industry and the kind of artists and the world surrounding it. It was pretty good. I liked it. It's about an hour and a half, I think. And I liked it for the first 35 minutes or so. And then it started to get into the more modern stuff. And it's not so much that they get into talking to artists from this time, but they start talking a lot about Mondo and the whole poster trading and collecting community. It feels like it's a Mondo ad. Like if it could get a rib removed, it would blow itself. There is just so much. Oh, Mondo, you know, they talk about all these other businesses that popped up following the Mondo idea or whatever, but it quickly becomes this Mondo ad. I don't know why I felt the need to throw that in, but it was just kind of annoying. It could have been, this thing I think was like maybe 80 minutes, and I feel like it could have been 40.
Okay. So do they go into the basic design of posters now and how they're all these collages of like these ensemble casts? Weird. I feel like I might have watched this.
You might have, because
they break down
Scream.
I think that was the first one they talked about doing that, where they basically have them all
they're like collages of their heads or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. And then they
used to be paintings.
Yeah, and they really drive it home with the Star Wars movies and the Marvel movies and all that, how all the posters are essentially the same template. They're just shifting in and out different actors or whatever.
Yeah, they talk about how in the early days that these movie posters would actually be paintings.
Yeah.
And no, they weren't credited. None of the people that actually did the artwork, like they just weren't credited at all. And then later there were some artists that would like hide their names in it. And they talk about kind of the 70s and the 80s, like the heyday of the movie poster. And then they say Scream is really the one that you could look to say, okay, this is just going to be headshots, like photographs that are composited and headshots of the main actors. And then, like you said, they kind of show, Star Wars, Marvel, just basically all posters these days are all Photoshop. There's not really, I mean, not that there's not artistry in it, but they're very paint by number now.
Well, the ones that I've brought him up before, what's his name? Something Duck. He does a lot of alternate posters and artwork for him. Like he did the Evil Dead Rise poster with the big cheese grater. Do you remember, I know you didn't see the movie, but when Scream 5 came out, there were like 10 different posters and they all had these very like retro VHS looks to them.
Yeah, I know.
He did a bunch of those.
Yep.
Yeah.
I can't think of his name, but I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's going to bug me now. I got to buy. But anyway, continue.
Yeah, so that was pretty much what I watched. I'm sure you'll bring it up. We went to a concert, and I'm not going to talk about the concert, but I'm going to talk about, because this is a show about consumption. It is the original show about consumption. I bought a very pricey pair of basically earplugs, and they're called a loop switch, and they have 3 different settings on them. So you put them in your ear, and there's a dial on it that you can turn, and each one is a different like strength of dampening. Noise dampening. They work pretty good. They were super comfortable. They fit right in your ear. You can't, from the front, you can't see that you have them in, which I've always been kind of, as a person that likes to protect my hearing, and because I haven't done it, I haven't been very diligent about it in the past. And I know that you are not a person that wears earplugs, but I have been a earplug wearer for a while, especially at concerts. It was really nice to not have to, I'm very conscious or self-conscious about wearing these pink or orange or whatever, like foam earplugs that you twist and put in your ear.
Right.
And these are nice. They're solid colors. There's a bunch of different colors. They're very expensive for earplugs. They're over $60, but I'm sure I'll use them quite a bit, and they get a thumbs up for me. So if you're looking for some earplugs, I think you could do a lot worse than the whole loop line. And they sell from as cheap as, I want to say, like $18 up to the $65 or whatever dollars that I paid for mine. So yeah, thumbs up.
Creepy Duck Design. That's
Creepy Duck Design, the poster guy.
So, yeah. But he does a lot of his posters that he puts up are not that cookie cutter, collage thing. A lot of them have that very,
they're like throwbacks.
Throwback. Yeah. That feel to them. Anyway, sorry, I didn't want to take away from earplug hour. So
let's talk about earplugs, shall we? I love when you pull them out, you can see the gunk. That's what she said. But yeah, that's pretty much all I've been watching. All I want to talk about what I've been watching, at least.
Well, I had a bunch of stuff that I watched, but since you brought up the fact that we've been spending so much quality time together and basically been spelunking around Hamtramck all weekend, I'll bring up a couple things. We started this week by going out to see a screening of the movie Blood Gorge. Friend of the show, Victor Gabriel, directed this movie. It's a little independent film. It's roughly like 40 minutes long or so. We've talked about it before. I know Jordana, who's been on the show several times, has talked about it. And you can see this movie now on YouTube for free. Strongly recommend that you check that out. But it's rare that you get to see a movie like this in a theater setting. I thought it was pretty cool opportunity to go out and check out, and you get to see a movie with people that made it, which is also cool. This was your first experience with Blood Gorge. We'll keep it brief because we're at the first part of the show. But how did you feel about it?
Well, when he got up and he kind of said a few words before the show and said he spent $600 on this movie, and I didn't know anything about the movie, like I had no preconceived notion or anything, but I was really impressed. It's not like a AAA movie or anything, but
sure.
It looked, the effects looked really good for the budget. They far outshot the budget. Let's put it that way. I thought the sound was pretty good. I know a lot of kind of independent movies, when you watch them, the sound is generally not something that a lot of focus is put on. I mean, there were little nitpicks where the sound mixing, and I think you mentioned it, it's a little different watching it in a big room on the PA that they had at Planet Ant in Hamtramck versus what you might listen to at home or on headphones or something. But I like that you could actually hear what people were saying. That seems like as I get older, that's the one complaint, or the way that they mix movies or something these days, that it makes it really difficult to hear what's being said. I feel like everything that was said in this was really clear. You could tell that they had a lot of fun making it, and that when you see a film where the people who made it had a lot of fun making it, it makes you have a lot of fun watching it. So yeah, I thought it was really, for a 40-minute short movie that was made in the area, I thought it was pretty cool. They showed a lot of video exclusive shots, which Video Exclusive, if you're from the Detroit area, is a shop on Telegraph in Dearborn Heights or Dearborn, I think. I think it's Dearborn right there.
Dearborn.
Yeah. They have a ton. They were like one of the old school movie theater, like VHS stores. And they had a huge selection. Now it's mostly porn. But, hey, to each their own. But yeah, I enjoyed it.
I think that movie deserves credit too for, we both watch our fair share of B movies and independent movies and, every shade of horror movie that you can think of. The performances in the movie for what they are, because with all due respect, I don't know if any of these people are actually actors or if they're just doing friends making a movie or, whatever. And more power to them. I haven't made a movie, so I can't say shit. But I think actually everyone in this movie gives a pretty good performance for what it is.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's a fun movie. And I know whenever we've brought it up, I've recommended it multiple times on this show, and I continue to recommend it. It's definitely a fun movie to check out. So fast forward to a day and a half later, yesterday in real time.
It was a day and a half later. That's accurate.
The band Co-Defendants made their way to Detroit, or Hamtramck, whatever you want to call it. If you're not familiar with that band, they only have one album out and a couple singles, but we have a episode that features that album pretty heavily. It's probably, in my opinion, the best like music-based episode that we've done, just because it was one that it was really fresh when it came out. Like neither of us had a lot of time to kind of marinate in the album too much, and it just, I don't know. There's something about, I like that episode a lot just because it feels like very genuine to me when I listen to it. But they're a fantastic group, and they absolutely blew it out of the water as a live group. They had a great band opening for them too, in Jay Navarro and the Traders, who they are local to us, so seeing them quite often. But yeah, that was just a great show. Do you have anything you want to throw in with that aside from earplug talk?
No, it was a good show. It was a good show for earplugs, but it was a good show because the music was good too. So it's just a nice small venue. Smalls is a small place, as indicated by the name. But yeah, it was a nice show to be able to be so intimate, and be so close to the band playing, and then be spot on. No complaints from me at all.
Yeah, so that was fantastic.
Maybe had a beer or two too many. That may have been my only complaint.
I didn't think I did until this morning.
That's what I'm talking about. Yeah. Going to work on Monday was not my favorite thing.
Yeah, well, I was complaining about that before I even got home. But then as far as stuff that I watch, most of the stuff I'm going to just kind of go through quickly as well, because I got a bunch of things in here. We touched on this episode or two ago when we were talking about the Brat Pack. I did get around to watching the Bratz documentary that is on Hulu. And frankly, I wasn't all that impressed with it. It comes off as the one guy, Alan something, not Alan Rickman. That's not
Alan Rickman.
No, Alan Rickman is Andrew McCarthy,
the little dummy
main guy.
The
No, he's
ventriloquist
the
dummy?
is he? I don't know. It just comes off like he's very like this article about. So for those who aren't aware with it, the Brat Pack wrote
Go
all
ask
the
your parents.
kids that, all those movies like Ferris Bueller and St. Elmo's Fire, Breakfast Club, all that. This group of young actors got labeled the Brat Pack in some fucking newspaper or magazine article, and this guy, Andrew McCarthy, who was one of those actors, got really fucking booger-lipped about it. And now, 40 fucking years later, he decided to make a documentary about it. And it mostly consists of him going, mind you, after leaving his like one floor of apartments in like Brooklyn. I'm like, yeah, you're really struggling if you got a whole floor of fucking apartments in Brooklyn. After leaving that, he goes to more successful members of the Brat Pack like Emilio Estevez and Rob Lowe, and is like, well, what did you think? Like, this really ruined my life. And he goes, how did it ruin your life? You're doing fine. You can only do so much. It's a narrative, and we still were success. Shit like that. So it just comes off as like,
stop being a bitch.
Yeah, like that's how I took it anyway. And
I've heard a few people talk about this and that. I think that's the consensus that I've heard.
Yeah. So I mean, that's on Hulu. If you want to watch that for some reason, go for it. But I was kind of disappointed with it. Switched over to Netflix at that point. After then, watched the Remembering Gene Wilder documentary, which that is a extremely well done documentary, and also a pretty big bummer because Gene Wilder was quite a talent, and you have to kind of go through some of the down parts of his life, But it's very well done, and if you have any appreciation for Gene Wilder, it's worth giving. I think it's like an hour and a half or so. It's not that hard to get through, but it's definitely worth watching. It's got a lot of Mel Brooks talking about him, which is kind of cool. Even though I still feel like whenever I see like current day Mel Brooks on my TV, I automatically assume, even when he's talking, I automatically assume someone's going to tell me that he died because he looks
Breaking
like
news.
he's had better days.
This man has died.
You know, if anyone was going to break news of their own death, I could see Mel Brooks being the guy to do it. Wouldn't surprise me at all. Staying on Netflix, I watched Meg 2, which is another dumb fucking shark movie with Jason Statham kicking sharks in the fucking face and shit.
Get out of my fucking pool.
Pretty much.
Oh, cool.
You're not that far off. It's just a dumb movie, and it's one of those movies that, like, there's so much dumb shit happening scene to scene that you kind of lose interest. It's not very good at telling a narrative story. When it does try to, all of a sudden in this supposed shark movie, here's Jason Statham doing karate with some like 4 guys, or I don't know. I was not a fan. I also had time. I'm going out of order now, but I did watch the new Beverly Hills Cop movie. I have no idea why they decided to call it Axel F. I think that's a stupid name. They should have just called it Beverly Hills Cop 4, but whatever. It's fine. You know, it feels like a Beverly Hills Cop movie, so it is what it, you know, what it set out to be. I guess they're already making a 5th one, which I don't know if that's necessary, but if you liked, you know, 1 through 3, I don't think you're going to leave part 4 upset by any stretch. Have you got a chance to look at that, or do you have interest in that at all, the new Beverly Hills Cop one?
I think I have a fading interest. Like, I'm curious, but I mean, I never saw 3, and I know that that's not like you need to see 3 to watch Axel F. But I mean, I've wanted to try and check out some of the things that Eddie Murphy has done recently. Like, I didn't see the was it like a Dolomite movie where he plays Rudy Ray Brown?
That one's actually
Rudy
pretty
Ray
good.
Moore.
I actually like that one.
When that came out, I was in Hungary, and my sister broke her kneecap, and it was like I was starting to watch it, and there's all this hubbub about your sister broke her knee, and I'm like, fuck, I guess I'm not watching this fucking movie. So I never got a chance to go back and watch it, but I haven't really I've been very curious about his career in the last few years, and because I've heard things that, like, you know, he went through such a long stretch where all the movies that he did basically bombed, and it seems like there's been more hype and more kind of hubbub surrounding the movies that he's done lately, and the smoke on the street is that they're not absolute garbage. So I'm curious. I just haven't watched anything that he's been in lately.
I'll say Coming to America 2 is absolute garbage. That's one of the worst movies I've seen in the last few years. The movie he did with Jonah Hill and Elaine, You People, that was not great. I think there's probably an audience for that because it's kind of like a rom-com with like a political message behind it, but I just thought it kind of wasn't that great.
Suck the balls.
I'm not going to go that far. Suck ball, maybe. Not both.
Singular ball.
Yeah. But yeah, Dolomite was pretty good. And I think he had another one too that I can't remember at the moment. But this one, it's not like you're going to go and get, 1980s or 1990s Eddie Murphy. Like, he's not that actor anymore. I'm not saying that he couldn't be, but that's just not what he's doing in any of these new movies. His characters that he used to play were like very borderline, like dirty as far as like comedy is concerned, but like just cleaned up enough to get a PG-13 rating. This just feels like these characters have all matured. If you liked Axel in Beverly Hills Cop 2 or Beverly Hills Cop 1, this feels like what happens to Axel when he's 50, but still has the same fucking job for some reason.
Same jacket.
Similar jacket. It's got the new logo. It doesn't have the old logo. Like the old jacket more.
Balls.
Yeah. Let's see. What else did I watch? There's a little 30-minute mock documentary on YouTube called The Moshumentary. I started watching this because this fucking dork has got a pretty funny like TikTok and like YouTube or Reels or whatever. He does short videos, like 1-minute little things that are usually pretty funny. And it's usually talking about him like crowd killing people at concerts and just looking like a general jackass. And he managed to stretch that into like a 30-minute movie, I guess. And I appreciate the fact that he tried to go out of his comfort zone, because it kind of very much feels like he went out of his comfort zone for this. But I think his comedic styling is much better in the 30-second to 45-second range as opposed to 30 minutes. I mean, again, watch at your own risk. And then I'll just go ahead and ramble through the other two. One of these is definitely going to get talked about again because you just watched it over here this week. I got around to watching Lady Terminator, which has been on my to-do list for a couple months now. And I got to say, that movie not only met but exceeded my expectations more than anything else I've watched in the last like month. If you can find that movie, I don't even know if or where that's streaming right now. If you want a good, stupid, like sci-fi horror movie, this is a pretty fucking good one. I mean, this is Crummy Movie March material, like to a T. Just perfect. I don't think we're going to be able to wait till March to talk about that.
I'm already planning January, by the way.
Oh, I know. I'm aware, and I'm on board with it. Hope you want to get sweaty again. Well, not you, but well, maybe
Sweaty.
whatever. The only other thing I watched, again, another callback to an older episode from Crummy Movie March, not this year, but last year. I don't know if it's technically the first of a series, but it feels very much so like the prequel to Hard Ticket to Hawaii, which was Malibu Express. Same director, mostly the same cast. A lot of Playboy Playmates, a lot of boobs, a lot of shooting, not a lot of story. It's fine. You know, it's 80s smut, basically. We all like smut. Yeah. So yeah, we're gonna put a pin on what we watched this week. There's probably some other things in there, like a Wayward Seinfeld episode or some bullshit. No one cares about that. We'll be back in just a moment here, and we're going to talk about the super mega highly anticipated summer schlockbuster, In a Violent Nature. Hey, Sean, what are you doing this afternoon?
I think I'm going to listen to Podcast in the Woods.
That's awesome. Did you know that they're the newest member of the You Run Podcast Network?
I didn't know that. Is that true?
That is true. Have you checked out Podcast in the Woods before?
I've been on the show. Hell yeah, I've listened to it before.
So have I. And it's always great listening to Boomer and Gabby chat about horror movies, maybe have a beverage or two, and just have a good old time hanging out in the woods, talking about scurry movies.
And sometimes boobs.
And sometimes boobs. Check them out. You can find them now at the You Run Podcast Network at yourunpodcast.com. So we're back, and as mentioned, we're going to talk about the movie In a Violent Nature. And as always, we start with a third-party review. And this week, this third-party review comes from the man, the myth, the legend, Eminem. Probably, maybe. I don't know. This guy's name is Marshall M. So I'm assuming that it's Eminem.
What? Whoa. It's our brush with celebrity.
So Eminem gives this movie 4 out of 5 stars. He says, "Oh, I love this film. Slashers are my fave subgenre of horror, and the kills in this were so gross and traumatizing. Especially that one. Go see this strictly for the kills if you're a slasher hater."
You know, that one. How many stars?
4 out of 5.
Did you say that already?
Yeah, I did.
Oh, well, fuck me for listening.
Now that we've heard Slim Shady's confusing and poorly written take on this movie, Sean, why don't you tell us what this movie's about?
All right. So for that, we head over to IMDb. This movie is currently number 19, up from 21 or up 21 spots from something. I don't know how to read. Reading's hard. We start with the storyline and the plot. There's one of them. Then I'm going to read this one first. Not sure which one it is. It says, when a locket is removed from a collapsed fire tower in the woods that entombs the rotting corpse of Johnny, a vengeful spirit spurred on by a horrific 60-year-old crime, his body is resurrected and becomes hellbent on retrieving it. That's one sentence. If we scroll down, okay, storyline. Here we go.
That is one sentence. How is that?
I don't know. It's like the thing about Face Off and son is killed by the facial surgery.
Yeah, but at least
whatever.
I was entertained by that, like, ludicrous. Anyway.
Well, more of the same down at the storyline. When a locket's removed from a collapsed fire tower, yada, yada, yada. His body is resurrected and becomes hellbent on retrieving it. Same second verse, same as the first. There's no, like, sometimes we get fan people. Sometimes we get fan people to write in the storyline. We can credit them, but there was nobody to credit. I want to just jump out before we start. I feel like we are going to be very heavily spoiler laden. So if you want to see this movie, I would suggest you watch it before you listen to the rest of the show, because we're going to talk about a bunch of shit about this movie. I don't know if I can withhold the things that I want to talk about without spoiling.
I agree with that. And this is kind of the type of movie that I don't know. Maybe this is showing my hand, but I don't know if there's enough here to be able to talk about this movie without spoiling. That's what kind of movie this is.
Yeah.
I don't know anyone in this cast. Is there anyone in this cast that you recognize, or
No.
is it just a bunch of randos?
Ne'er-do-wells. No, I don't recognize anybody. And the writer-director is Chris Nash. He's basically more known for special effects. He did Psycho Gorman. He did, which I talked about on Podcast in the Woods. He did special effects for The Void, I believe, but we never talked about The Void like in depth on this show. But I think you talked about it, didn't you, with BP, or was that somebody else?
No, he asked us to help him get people to watch it, but no, I didn't talk about it with him. I watched it because of him and enjoyed it quite a bit. But
okay, we'll pretend I didn't say it.
Yeah,
but yeah, there's nobody in the
What did
cast
you
that
say?
you would immediately. There's nobody in the cast that you'd immediately say, "Oh yeah, it's that guy from that thing."
And truthfully, like, I could see the guy that plays Johnny, this Rye Barrett guy. I could see him being cast as like the big violent dude in a lot of movies going forward, just because of this movie.
He's
But
got that
as
body.
of right now, yeah, he's got
He
that
got that
body.
body,
He
boy.
knows how to walk around in the woods and carry a hook. This movie, this is a Shudder movie, which Shudder's actually been doing some pretty good stuff when it comes to their independent films. I feel like they've had a lot more hits than misses. We talked about Late Night with the Devil recently, which is a Shudder film. We both enjoyed that. The Void was a Shudder film that we just mentioned. Deadstream was a really good one that I want to get around to us talking about at some point. So they've had a lot of like really interesting and well-received movies. And this film definitely had the hype train in full effect behind it. Like, I've been hearing about this movie for a couple months now. And I much like you, I generally try to avoid trailers, so I never saw the trailer for this. I never felt the need to. I was told that there was going to be a slasher and there was going to be some kind of woods or some bullshit involved, and I was sold off of that. I didn't care about anything else. I was willing to see it just off of that description.
I was told there would be cake.
I was also told there would be cake. That's one of the many things that I'm disappointed about.
The thing I found kind of interesting is I went into this watching this movie. I just watched it a couple days ago, and I went into it not even reading the synopsis on IMDb. And when I pulled up, again, being a dummy and pulling up IMDb to look at the cast or look who wrote it or whatever, or maybe to look at the time. The time on this movie is 1 hour and 33 minutes, just to put that out there. I didn't, even just reading the synopsis, I felt like I knew too much. You know, the part that we already read out loud and all that stuff about the pendant, because the whole movie just gets into basically can we just get into like what the very base level, like 30,000 foot view of the plot is?
You mean the Skyrim camera angle of the whole fucking movie?
Yeah, it's so basically this movie is about some dickheads that are camping out in the woods or whatever, and they find a pendant on the end of a pole. And the first, I don't know, maybe minute or 2 or 3 minutes of the movie, or it's just a shot of greenery, and then it kind of pans over to the pendant hanging from this pole, and somebody's like, "Oh, that's so cool, I'm going to give it to so and so," and they end up taking it. The pole moves or whatever, and then this big hunk of a man comes out of the dirt. And my first note was, this motherfucker looks like Solomon Grundy. Solomon Grundy, motherfucker. And that's every note that I wrote refers to him as Solomon Grundy. He is Johnny, and the legend has it that this pendant is holding him in the ground because when he was, I think the legend that they explain is
There's some kind of like mother's story or some shit behind it.
as a young man. Yeah, it's like his mother's pendant. And when he was a young man, he was, I don't know, developmentally disabled. Let's put it that way. And he basically gets messed around with by these adults in a logging camp. They don't like this kid. Everything that goes bad, they kind of blame on Johnny, or they take it out on him. And then they lure him to this fire tower with the promise of toys, and they kill him or something. And then he just comes back from the dead. He puts on this fire helmet or a fire mask, like an old school, like early 1900s fire mask, like a leather fire mask
thing.
Yeah. And he goes from looking like Solomon Grundy because they don't show his face much at the very beginning until maybe like midway through, and you get a glimpse of his face, and looks like Solomon Grundy. And then, but when he puts on he finds this fire helmet, motherfucker looks like a Menomina. Like, he looks like, what are those things called? The yip from Sesame Street. He looks even more ridiculous.
I thought they were going for like a steampunk Friday the 13th Part 2 Jason because of the flannel.
Yeah.
I thought that was the look they were going for, but I don't think it works on that. And I'm going to bring up the Friday the 13th comparison again later. But anyway, let's try to talk. Let's say whatever good things we have to say, because there's
Well, I
going to
don't
be
really think I want to talk much about good things because
this movie is only bad feelings, and I like bad feelings.
this is going to get me heated on the level of Killer Clowns.
That's fine.
Here's the thing for me. This is my personal opinion. You want me to buy into this new slasher character, right?
Mm.
He's got to either look really menacing or cool or something. When he comes out and he looks stupid, and you make him look even stupider with his quote unquote trademark, like his fire helmet mask, you got a tough row to hoe to get me back on the side of being like rooting. You root for Jason, you root for Freddy, you root for Michael in a way. I feel like Michael maybe don't root for him as much, but you kind of, some people do, especially as the movies go on.
By part 4, you start rooting for him because everything else is off the rails, so why not?
But this guy, he just looks so... He goes from being stupid looking to being stupider looking. I don't understand the choices that are made here.
Well, here's the thing about that. Okay, yes, he looks kind of stupid, but there's two big things that make him look stupid in this, like make the character look stupid. One, the majority of this movie is shot in like broad daylight. A big part of why characters like Jason or Michael look creepy and weird is because you're doing things like, frankly, you're not seeing them the whole fucking movie. Like you're not seeing, they show up in small parts or they light them weird so they look more intimidating, or they, you only see them when they're being as brutal as possible. So much of this movie is just watching Johnny come lately like wander around the forest in Skyrim camera angle. And
we're talking
the
third
biggest
person, just in case you're not familiar with Fallout. I've called it Fallout, but Fallout or Skyrim. Yeah, exactly.
So 90% of the movie is shot from that angle, and you're just kind of following the killer around while he does whatever the fuck he wants to do. Which, if you were to put that on paper, if I had known that and you just put that on paper, I'd be like, that's kind of interesting, I guess. Maybe that will work. What it does when you watch the movie, at least for me, and I don't think I'm going that far off from what you're probably thinking, is it removes all possible elements of tension in the movie, which is a big problem for a movie that's supposed to be a horror movie. It removes any type of like scary elements, because the problem is what you're following the whole time. He is in shot, like in view the entire time. There's no way that you're getting like fuck a jump scare. You're not getting anything because you see everything telegraphed 20 yards away. Like he'll see like a little flicker of some sunglasses or something that reflects off the light. I'm making this up as I go, but I'm not that far off. And basically you just watch him kind of zoom in and like close in on guy or girl, and then he dispatches them and he's off to wander around the woods some more. So it doesn't, all the things that you can do in a film that enhance what could be a creepy looking get up makes it look like some steampunk nerd just out in the woods who has had a really bad day, is kind of what I got out of it.
And the plotting back and forth, there are scenes where you just watch him go from the left side of the screen, and he slowly paces to the right side of the screen. Then he does something, there's this little burst of action, then they follow him behind the back, or they show him in the exact same set or scene, walking from the left side to the right side. It just makes the movie feel so much slower because the guy doesn't run. He doesn't move fast, and unless he wants to. There's so many like incongruous... I wouldn't say
that he doesn't have the magic teleportation powers that Jason or Michael has, where all of a sudden like, there they are.
No, but in one scene in particular, there's a scene, and I want to go back to the perspective in a minute, but like the whole scene where he plays a trick, right? He lures them out, he baits them out, he puts the log on the horn, the car horn, and people come out. Well, then all of a sudden he's Spring Hill Jack, and he can walk super fast. He can do a speed walking routine around the house, and nobody sees him. This motherfucker, I am convinced that he is supposed to be superpowered. He either has impeccable hearing, because you can hear what people say from literally across a lake. You can hear them louder than if you were standing with them in conversation. He's invisible because nobody notices this huge guy. Like, he is at least 6.5 feet tall, this guy, and thick. Like a dude, you would not miss this guy. And
carrying chains and metal shit. That also makes no sense.
Even at the very beginning, the first kill scene or whatever, when he stumbles upon that house where the ranger and that guy that lives out there that sets the traps, the trapper, are talking, you can hear that conversation as if you were next to them, and he's far as hell away. They're like turning and looking in his direction. Nobody sees him. Nobody hears his footsteps. The only time they hear him is like he steps on a twig, and somehow that like alerts somebody, but he can hear everything. It's super frustrating. And I appreciate the choice of the director sticking to the guns, or cinematographer, whoever made the decision to have this like focus on Solomon Grundy the whole time. That's cool. You made a choice. You stuck with it. I can appreciate that.
Again, I agree with you. I can respect the fact that you try to do something different, but
But it's like you said, it takes all the tension out of it. There's probably 15 minutes of the movie where they do, at the end of the movie, they follow one of the last people, one of the last victims. And there's a scene when he first meets the dickheads in the forest, like the camping dickheads. And that scene, he kind of like leaves the shot and they focus on the people in the camp. But other than that, it's all on Solomon Grundy. So it's a choice. It's a choice, that's for sure. But I mean, this movie has to have, if you could, I don't know if the soundtrack is available, but if there's a soundtrack for this movie, it's just,
there is no soundtrack.
No, there probably is. And it's 100 tracks of just heavy sounding footsteps.
Well, yeah, that's one of the things I wrote down that really pisses me off about this movie is, aside from the fact that you've already taken all the tension out of this away by having us follow the person that we're supposed to be running from, you also do nothing. There's two things that they do nothing to amplify what could be a creepy movie. Well, there's more than two, but I already mentioned that the whole thing's like the majority of this movie is shot in daylight, which takes a lot away because you can see everything. They also made the choice to use a 4:3 camera angle on this, which makes no fucking sense to me, because if you're going to use there's one or two ways that I feel like this should have been shot. If you insist on using the 4:3 camera angle, I don't think that's necessary, but let's just say that you make the argument that you're going to do that. Go the fucking Grindhouse route and make it look kind of shitty in like some kind of lost VHS tape or something. If you're going to use the 4:3 angle, do something to make this movie look creepier and shittier, and like, I say shittier from like a perspective, like, oh, you made it look like this weird thing, as
this is aesthetic, this like old aesthetic,
right? Do that. Or what probably makes more sense is just shoot it like a normal wide angle lens so that you can, I mean, one thing that this movie does have, wherever they're wandering around, there's a lot of really nice looking, beautiful landscapes and stuff. Like, at least I could be like, well, I'm really taking in this forest or whatever. Like, you can almost, and if you're doing that too, by using the wide angle and all that, you could hide things in the forest. Like maybe you, as he's wandering around aimlessly for the 4th hour of this fucking movie, throw like a head on a stick or something in there that's been there for like 6 months and is all gross and whatever. Like, there's nothing like that in this to kind of enhance what should be a creepy movie. It just seems like some dolt wandering. And I want to take it back there, because you mentioned it, there's a person at the end that shows up. There is one actor in this movie that I did recognize. Her name is Lauren Marie Taylor. And the only reason why I know her is she is the girl from Friday the 13th Part 2 that sprays perfume on her cooch before she goes. That's the only reason why I know her.
Oh, well, hey, that's something to be known for, right?
Yeah, well, and now this. But
yeah, there you go.
Woo! Yeah, woo! But yeah, there's just even getting some scoring in here to kind of like, you never realize how much a score can really change the mood of a movie until you watch a movie like this where there is no score, and you realize how painfully dull it is that it's fucking missing.
And I don't think a score would have done anything for the movie because of the way.
I don't think it would have done much, but at least would have gave something to hear.
You can have creepy music where I think the scene at night outside the cabin when they're all like going to bed or whatever in this cabin, and he's just outside and watching them like peeping on everybody. That is a scene that doesn't require music, because it is creepy that he's just outside and they can't see him, because when you turn a light on or something, you can't see outside because of the reflection on the glass or whatever. But I just feel like with all the plotting, with all the just slow march to insanity, there's not anything that a score would help. And the other thing is, like, the movie feels like it. I think the thing that bothers me the most about the movie is that it feels like it's not a good use of your time. It doesn't value your time.
I did more watch checks in this movie than anything else that we watched. My God. That includes the Bukkake bus and Fat Guy Goes Nuts. So I would rather watch those than watch this again.
And that's saying a lot. And even the kills, while they can be very gruesome, they just are so slow. The yoga girl on the cliff face, that's super slow. The ranger with the wood splitter or log splitter or whatever is so painfully slow.
I have two complaints. That's the main thing that I keep hearing positive about this movie, is how great the kills are. And I guess they're great for what they are. But here's the thing I don't like about these kills. These victims give up before they die. Like, before they're even close to, like, the yoga girl's a good example. So this is a major spoilers, because people are saying this is the reason to watch this movie, is this particular kill. I actually think there's a couple better kills. The axe to the face. I know this is the second week in a row I'm saying axe to the face is the way to go, but there's a couple better kills because at least a little bit more happens. But this girl is she's basically on like a cliff or like a clearing of some sort. It looks like there's a hill or a not good fall. Like you would probably be in bad shape if you fell down this wherever the fuck she is. However, there's plenty of room to her left and her right where she could pick a direction and run or scream or something. Do something to try to get away from steampunk Johnny Solomon Grundy that's coming after her.
Phenomena.
Instead, that too. Instead, she sees him. She gets a little freaked out. He walks up to her and she basically just stops and stares at the camera and proceeds to get dead. And I'm not opposed to like the kill's moderately creative. I think it's a little stupid,
gratuitous.
But it's yeah, it's dumb. But I mean,
It's a slasher. I mean,
yeah, I'm not complaining about the kill itself, but the way that she doesn't have any fight in her going up to it, and she's not the only victim in this movie that like just gives up before they like seemingly have a reason to give up. Like they seem like they have plenty of time that they could still run or fight back or do fucking something. She just stops and is like, I guess I'm gonna have my head pulled through my stomach now. Okay, groovy. I'm flexible. The log splitting scene. So I listened to a couple reviews about this because I, always do. Someone picked up on the fact that dude was paralyzed ahead of that. Did you pick up on that? Because I didn't.
yeah, he
notice that.
He like breaks his neck essentially.
Yeah, I saw that he fucked him up, but I didn't I don't know. I guess I didn't put two and two together that he was paralyzed.
He essentially like grabs him by the scruff of the neck, I think, and like cracks his spine.
Okay.
So the guy doesn't react except look around, and he can't do anything.
There's two things about that kill that bug me. One, I thought even if you're paralyzed, you could still scream, which he doesn't do, but whatever, digress. If you're going to cut a guy in half with a log cutter or cut a guy up with a log cutter, why aren't we either going full like Art the Clown and like splitting him right up the middle,
Yes.
or going full like Dexter and splitting him into multiple pieces as opposed to two? Because he basically puts him on this log splitter. He takes his hand or wrist or something like that, basically
forearm.
hacks it there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, something like that. And then he takes his head off around the neck. Okay. But it's like he gets bored and just is like, all right, well, I'm as bored with this as you are. So let's go walk somewhere else.
Yeah, that's what I was exactly thinking. Splay him out and split him in half down the center, between the legs or whatever up to his head. And it's like, oh, does this work? I'll put your arm here. And why does it take longer? I mean, I know that bone is strong, right? But it's like it takes more effort than it would to just split this log, because he does it with a log to show the guy. He's torturing him. He's prolonging it. And he's like, wow, let's try your arm. Okay, that worked. Will it work on the guy's neck? And it's just so slow. It just takes so long. Like, why does it take so much more power for this log splitter to cut the guy's arm? It's a log. Long way,
right?
I don't think it's going to take that much effort. It almost feels like the way that
even if it doesn't cut it, it's going to crush it.
Yeah, and the way that they showed Solomon like pulling on the handle to make this thing split the arm in half, it's like he's putting the effort into it. It's a machine, dude. Yeah. That's not how machines work. I don't have to. If I push my gas pedal through the floor, does it make the car go faster? No, it's just open or it's closed. It just doesn't make any sense, and it's just, like I said, an example of it not respecting my time. Just kill the guy.
Pretty much. And yeah, as far as the time thing is concerned, you mentioned it, it's an hour and 33 minutes, hour 34, 30, whatever. It's short. Thank fucking whoever. But it does not feel short. Like I said, no. I can't think of a movie where I've done more watch checks than this. And it was mostly like, God, this is still going on. I would have thought, I feel like...
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I thought it would have been funny if when he paralyzes the ranger, he like goes into this garage or whatever, some kind of, shed, and you hear a motor start up. I was so bored with this movie that at that point I was like, it would be really hilarious to really just kind of put this thing on its head is if the engine starts up and all of a sudden he comes out on a motorcycle and it plays like Bad to the Bone. I've been like, this would have been a perfect joke to put in this movie. I mean, it wouldn't have fit anything, but I just thought like, oh, that'd be clever, but that may have saved it for me.
I got one more thing I want to hit on before, and then I'll be done, because otherwise I'm just going to start circling and whatever.
Yeah.
Another thing that I never realized that I would miss so much in a movie is all of our non-Johnny Steampunk characters have like so little development, and like this is kind of going for that camp slasher vibe. And one of the things we just talked about, The Burning last week, we've talked about Friday the 13th and Sleepaway Camp and all these, I'm sure I'm forgetting one that we've talked about that's a camp slasher. these movies all, yes, they have a formula. You get, 5 to 10 kids. There's always the one kid that's the asshole, the slut, the jock, whatever. And you kind of get to know these kids, and there's comedic relief in the tension, and it makes you, whether you're rooting for the killer or you to get them, or you're rooting for them to get away, it gives you an interest in pursuing and following the story and what's happening in the movie. These characters that are in there, even like, yeah, you can hear them talk, like they breadcrumb together this, killer's story, I guess, and whatnot, but I just didn't give a fuck. Anytime these characters, like, it was so hard to make me care about anything that was happening on screen with how like bad this was. Even if you had like enough time to follow these characters around and be like, oh, this is, I don't even know who these characters are. This is Jack. He's the one who woke up Johnny, and he's also,
he likes fruit roll-ups.
Got a little wiener and likes fruit roll-ups or whatever. Yeah. So just something to make you care about any of these people that we're supposed to be following. It is painfully obvious how much you need characters other than just the killer in the fucking movie. And they did absolutely nothing to make you even notice these characters. I mean, obviously you notice them because they're on screen, but there's nothing about these characters that make you say, I need to watch this person for better or worse.
Well, it's also impossible to do that when all you do is follow the main killer, and they never have any time to expand. They're just nameless, almost faceless fodder to be destroyed. I mean, there's no story to fit in here because there's no plot device to tell you anything about a story. The story that you get, most of it, is the campfire story that kind of tells about the White Pine Massacre or whatever it's called. And that could be all made up. It's coming from an unreliable character that basically is just telling you the story. I don't know if that's the real story. I guess it is, because that's all I have to go off of.
But even if you compare this, I'm going to use a movie that I know you don't care for to compare this. Even if you compare this to the first Terrifier movie, as much as that movie is literally just like several characters that are implanted for Art to do whatever Art's going to do to them, I still feel like it's dramatically more engaging what this came out as.
Yeah, I'd agree. I mean, I'm not a huge fan of Terrifier, but yeah, I mean, you get more stuff played on the news. Like, there are ways to tell a story without having to explicitly pause the movie and everybody sits around. Okay, right. Hey, so what's going on actually is, I don't need that. We don't need that as an audience, but we do need something to latch onto. If all your movie is this big fucking dope walking around, this dunce just plodding around, and you get absolutely no story. There are video games with more story. We watch movies because of the story. I play a video game because it gives me agency to do what I want to do within reason. It's frustrating. It's like, I guess let's talk about the feeling that they want to go make this like franchise. Like they want this to be the new Jason or something. Can we talk about that?
Yeah, sure. I really hate the fucking Friday the 13th comparison, because I feel like if you're going to compare, not you, but if you're going to compare every movie that's a camp slasher to Friday the 13th, obviously I've seen every Friday the 13th movie several times over. You know what they all have in common? They're fun. As bad as some of them are, and I'm not trying to, I love them all, but like some of them are objectively not great movies, but they're fun because there's enough there for you to kind of pay attention to. And if they're going to try to, there's someone out there who's, I guarantee, that thinks this is like the best slasher movie that's ever been made. I know that person exists. I've
sure, of course they do.
Looking for this.
Mm-hmm.
Eminem was very happy about this movie. But if you're going to try to stretch this out to, you barely stretch this out into one movie. How are you going to make a sequel out of this? Unless you go through and try to retcon everything and actually make a legitimate movie where you have a narrative and characters and tell a story to kind of piece something together. Like, why would I want to watch another 5 minutes of fucking dickwad creeping through the woods in like the most obvious way? There's nothing that would make me want to go back to this again.
I feel like they almost totally ripped this character off from a Jason Voorhees. I feel like the way that he comes to life,
it's not the first, but
no,
sure.
But this is like they're trying to carbon copy and just make it different. Like he's disgusting looking like Jason became later on. He goes down, then he gets back up, the same kind of thing. He's
got a mommy complex. He's slow, and he, apparently doesn't die very well.
Right. And he can only be like subdued in this certain way, which that whole scene, the ranger scene with the shotgun, is frustrating because he has the shotgun. He's like, okay, I put him down. You need to get these chains wrapped around this guy's legs and his feet, and we'll go take him back up to the fire tower. and we'll put him back in the ground where it'll keep him. It's the only ground that'll keep him under. And the guy's like, no, I can't do it. You do it. Oh, okay. Let me get as close as possible with this shotgun. And then I'll do the thing
Not
and I'll
pull
wrap
the
him
trigger.
up. Yeah. And they only shoot him one time. Oh, oops. I guess I'm dead. It's just fucking dumb, dude. The whole thing is just, it insults my intelligence and it insults my time.
Yeah.
And
Do you
then
have anything
at
else
the
you
end,
want to hit on? Or is
I
it,
just want to say
is
at
it-
the end, I don't understand what happens with the girl. She's like the quote unquote final girl. Like the guy with the chains gets axed and he just beats the shit out of his head with an axe, like that guy, until it's just mush. And she turns around, she stares at it for a while, like you said with the yoga girl. She finally decides she's going to turn around and run. And then you hear like the panting of Johnny, of Solomon Grundy, the entire time. Is he supposed to be that he's following her, or that she just continually hears it in her head?
I think that's the 10% of the movie where there's maybe a little bit of tension there, because suddenly Solomon Grundy's off screen.
Yeah, you don't see him.
Right. So you're kind of at that point, because, you know, we're a horror movie audience. We know what to expect in a movie like that. Like, I was expecting, like, I don't want to say it would vindicate the movie, but I was expecting him to do some fucking crazy shit to that pickup truck and like flip it over and murder the shit out of both, something, you know, and they don't. And so, no, I don't know exactly what happened as far as, like, to answer your question. And that is 98%. I stopped caring well before she got in that car. So they might explain it better. I'm sure someone smarter than me is probably like, oh, well, it's a, you know, euphemism for abandonment issues or something. I stopped caring. And when you
I'm
stop
never going to look that
caring
deep
about
into this movie.
well, that's the thing. Like, once I checked out, like, as far as caring, like, I probably halfway through, I'm like, I'm only finishing this because we're talking about it. I really want to turn this fucking thing off. So it's, yeah, I don't have a good answer for you to your initial question.
Yeah.
And I think that speaks more to where this is going to go when it's hot dog time.
Yeah, and the other last thing, just again, we've already talked a lot about this and it's spoilerific, but the end, the car ride and the story, again, colossal waste of time. It is a story, a nonsense story it's basically, yeah, sometimes people just kill, sometimes animals just kill because they get the taste to kill stuff and then they kill it. It's like, great, you made a movie based off that. That's terrific. Love it. Love that for us.
Well, again, if there was some like giant jump scare, like, again, just for the sake of argument, let's say he's hiding in the bed of the pickup truck, smashes through the window, you know, bludgeons them both like through the front of the car and blaze of explode, whatever. This is just throwing shit out, pulling shit out of my ass. That would have been a better writing, because at least something fucking happened.
Yeah, this movie should be called At Least Something Fucking Happened.
Well, I guess.
Might be
There's a
better.
killer too.
Yeah.
I need a treat. What time is it?
Then you're in for a big treat, bro. Because it's hot dog time.
So I'll go ahead, because I think I might be responsible for us watching this one, or at least partially responsible for it. So I'll get this out of the way.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
For nothing.
Well, I don't really have a whole lot positive to say. Even the things like, you can make the argument that there's good kills in this movie. I would make the argument that the way that everything leading up to each kill is done so poorly that it just becomes like some fucking adult coloring book with like a bunch of splatter. There's nothing in this movie to latch onto. There's no rewatchability to it. There's no humor in it. There's no, you know, breathtaking cinematography that makes you think, oh, that was really worth watching for this. Basically, this is a movie that was like a 15-minute concept that got stretched into an hour and a half and is just borderline unfucking watchable. It is, you know, to use Sean's words, it's an insult to your time. It's an insult to your intelligence. It's an insult to your, you know, if you like slasher movies, this movie is basically saying, you like slasher movies? Well, fuck you. Sit down and be bored for the next hour and a half. I have absolutely zero intent to watch this again. This is the only movie that we've watched, and I've spent the last 3 or 4 days saying to Sean, like, I really need to bitch about this movie, and came really close to us actually getting to the point of complaining about it before recording, which would have probably created a problem. So,
And we never do that. We never talk about the movie before we get on here and talk about it.
yeah, because we want it to be, but whatever. My point is, this movie gets like one shitty gold pendant dipped hot dog out of 10. It's bad and it should feel bad. I'd rather watch a girl spray perfume in her crotch on a loop than watch this again.
All right. Well, I apologize. It's going to be long, so I apologize in advance.
I tried to be as quick as I could with it.
Well, thank you. You left me all the time. So,
something involving this movie has to go quickly.
right. Something has to be courteous about this movie. Technically, the movie isn't really bad per se, right? It's not one of the worst movies that we've watched because it's a bad movie. It's bad because of the way it abuses your time. Like it's bad because of the way it insults your intelligence. It's like a lesson in masturbation, basically, with no payoff. Like you're just jerking it forever and pulling the sheath off of it, and there's just nothing good comes at the end. The pointless plotting, the walking shots from left to right, from right to left. There's a little bit of action, then more pointless plotting. The story at the end of the movie, like I mentioned before, is like the epitome of all of it. It's going on, and I'm looking at how much time is left in the movie, and I'm just like, is this thing going to be over? Why are we continuing to just draw this out? And it really, like you said, it feels like a 15-minute idea that turned into an hour and a half, and it's all done in the name of padding the runtime. Like it's like Shudder won't show this movie unless it's this long, and they went a second over it, and they used just as much time to just waste to get there, and they just called it a day. The special effects, they're really good. I think I would say they're borderline like masterful. They're done in broad daylight. You mentioned a lot of it takes place in broad daylight, and I think it's impressive when you can do effects like this in broad daylight. There's like seamless cuts where you don't even notice. How did they change this and have it be CG? I think of the drone shot. He slams this rock on a guy's head from like a drone shot above. You don't see a cut, and his head just turns into like a bucket of blood. That's fairly impressive, and it's the drone's all shaky and shit, and that's kind of takes away from it a little bit, but it maybe adds a level of complexity. I don't know, but because of that, it just makes the movie lopsided. Like there are some that look really good. The ones that look good look really good, and there are some that are just like, that's not great. Some of them are really quick with no fanfare, like the one where he throws the axe and he hits him from 10 feet away, and it kills the guy instantly.
In the face.
And then the one with the yoga girl, and that just takes forever. And again, seemingly done in a way it just pads out more time. If they were trying to come up with the next slasher franchise, a Friday or a Halloween or Nightmare, my word of advice, the single thing I can offer is don't make your villain look stupid, because nothing's going to turn me off faster than making a stupid looking monster. If you're going to go stupid, you got to go all out, make it look ridiculously stupid, not stupid like a Phenomena puppet, but make it stupid like, 3 miniature clowns sitting on each other's shoulders under a trench coat or something.
Chucky.
Yeah. Chucky, Uncle Sam, go along those lines. I think the Fallout third-person camera following Solomon Grundy around seems clever at first, but it's obviously a choice, but it just goes on too long. I give this movie, because of the special effects solely, I give it 3 pointless wastes of time out of 11 hot dogs.
Yeah, I started, when I initially wrote down what I thought about this, I had it around a 4. And the more I've stewed on this movie over the last few days, the more it just fucking annoys me. And that's why I dropped it. I think this might be the lowest rated movie that I
think
talked
so.
about.
I think Bukkake Bus could rival
I think
it.
That was a 2.
Oh, did it?
I think I gave that a 2. I could be wrong. That was a while ago. But
the only thing to me that redeems this movie is that those special effects in daylight look pretty good. But
you're right. I'm not disagreeing with you on that. I just think that everything special effects are great, but if you don't have everything else, if you don't have everything else that leads up to it, and again, I'll use Terrifier as an example, knowing that you don't like that movie.
Thank you.
There's more in that movie that at least enough to make it be like, all right, well, I said it when we talked about it. I felt like that was a concept that they turned into like a short film to kind of get the money to do the next thing. Like it was a proof of concept. I don't feel like this was a proof. If this was 15 minutes, it would be a proof of concept. This feels like a proof of concept gone wrong that failed magnificent.
It feels like a really good short film, like a really good 15-20 minute short film where some of the special effects that kill some people. Yeah. And people would be like, man, did you see that? I can't wait to see what Chris Nash does next. But when you pad it, you kill it. It's just, you didn't kill it in a good way. You killed the whole thing. So now if you make a sequel to this, it's going to have to be retcon. You can't keep doing this. Like it can't just be the same thing again. And there are people that do watch movies and they just want to see the kills. Like our buddy Eminem on, I'm assuming Letterboxd, was like
Rotten Tomatoes.
Oh, okay. Sorry, Eminem on Rotten Tomatoes. yeah, there are people out there that's what they want to see. But if you're like watching this because, oh man, I heard so much great things about this, you're gonna like the kills are kind of cool, but you're gonna pay so much just to get to that point.
Well, I don't think I'm going out on a limb and saying this. I think we both want to see great kills too, and we're going to it. It's a slasher. You should expect or want to see. If you don't have a bunch of kills in a slasher movie, you don't have a slasher movie.
Yeah.
I want that too. But this movie taught me that that's not enough. So anyway, I remembered to do question of the week this week, shockingly, or not. I don't know. We're usually pretty good about that. Our question of the week this week is, which highly anticipated or hyped film ended up disappointing you? I'll go ahead and put it out there now. This is my answer, is In a Violent Nature, because fuck this movie. But we asked you, our loving audience, maybe hating audience. You might be mad at us by the end of this. We'll see. And we only got responses in 2 spots this week. We got responses on Instagram and on Twitter. Let's start on Twitter because there's not as many. So over there at Cinema Poison responded with the movie Righteous Kills starring Al Pacino and Robert De Niro. Have you seen that movie?
No, but I read what you wrote, and the poster just looks like the movie should be called Two Old Angry White Guys. Like, what are you so pissed off about?
What Sean's referring to, he's got a picture of the movie up for, context, I guess. And I was like, that poster or cover, whatever, just always screamed to me like, we're here for the paycheck, and that's it. And I never saw it, but that's what it sounds like.
Yeah, we got out of bed for this?
Yeah, right. So Boomer over at Podcast in the Woods looks like he might have read ahead a little bit. He says, In a Violent Nature had tons of hype. We finally sat down and watched it, and wow, what a letdown. It should have been called Walking Violently Through Nature. Not much else happens. If you ever decide you wanted to spend an evening watching someone hike through the woods, this is it. I'd rather watch The Blair Witch if I want to watch people hike through the woods, and I'm not a big fan of that movie either.
I mean, I watch Alone.
There you go.
And that's much more fun than this, and nobody even dies.
I haven't watched enough of it, but I agree with you. It's more fun than this. So at SWO Productions or Stu World Order says, I legitimately expected Thor Love and Thunder to be a movie of the year type contender before it came out. Ragnarok was amazing, but Love and Thunder came out and it was not. I never saw that one. I fell off the Marvel train before that.
Same.
So I did like Ragnarok.
Ragnarok was great. Yeah, I didn't see that till way after, but I really enjoyed that one.
And then Newbie1331 says, a recent watch that I felt was mediocre was Evil Dead Rise. There's some decent kills, but overall I found it to be blah compared to the other films in the franchise. Fair enough.
I like that, but what the hell do I know?
More of it than Well. Over on Instagram, Under the Four Boards Pod says Infinity Pool, Antrim, and Skinamarink. I haven't seen Antrim. Skinamarink looks horrible. Infinity Pool just made me feel like I needed a shower.
Very goopy.
Oh, and it made me really dislike Mia Goth. So this might be my favorite response of the week. So at Fright Fair says, great photo choice, no notes. The photo choice was just Steven Seagal eating a giant carrot, looking stupid. So our friends over at Dissect That Film, they said, so I'm going with Possession. I had never seen it until last year. Everyone talks about how amazing it is, and I couldn't get into it. My brain couldn't comprehend the insanity that was before me, and it just didn't hit for me. I haven't seen that movie. I'm honestly not that familiar with it. Are you?
Haven't seen it.
Well, it sounds like we don't have to watch it anytime soon.
Thanks for that.
Our friend Scott over at You Run Podcast says, how long have you got? Skinamarink, Midsummer, Nope, anything James Wan. I'm going to stop as this could go on for quite a while. Our friend Old Nerdy Bastard, who is one of the boys over at Krusty Boys, just said Paranormal Activity. That movie did suck. I agree with you. Friend Average Strucy says Coming to America 2, probably. Could only last 20 minutes into that hot turd of a film. The first one was so damn good. It is a bad movie. My expectations were low, but it has Wesley Snipes in it, so that's something. I don't know if he ever paid his taxes for it, but
no, probably not.
Bro Bob Pop says never any by this man. Steven Seagal always delivers. We'll see about that. Stay tuned for next week. Halloween Babies podcast said Bo is afraid, and then our friend Justin over at Pop Culture Reflections Pod, also on the You Run Podcast Network, says Heredity, all the hype, and yet I thought it was a boring, self-indulgent, overcomplicated piece of shit. Justin, you can probably apply that exact same line to this movie as well.
Here's a nice piece of shit.
And then we're gonna wrap on this. We'll let Sean answer too, but from our last audience response is from Sam over at Feature Creatures DTF, and he says Tusk. I actually questioned him on it. I said, do people not named Kevin Smith hype up the movie Tusk? Because I saw it in theaters on opening day and I don't remember any hype. I'm also lucky that my wife didn't dump my ass right there after taking her to see it on opening day. Response, I hyped it up. I was pumped and I thought it was going to be the funniest thing ever. Then it was just bad. Took a girl on a date to see it and I attribute it to our eventual breakup. So Kevin Smith breaking up couples at like a 50% clip.
I mean, you kind of hyped up Tusk to me. I feel like I got bamboozled.
Well, sometimes I got to do that to get you to, be on board for a topic.
I'm on board for everything.
I don't know about that.
Hey, come on.
Sean, do you have a movie that you want to add to the hype pile?
I can't think of a movie right now off the top of my head, but like The Spirit, we conversed about the question of the week. The Spirit was like hyped up things. So I have two like non-movie things. Segway was like a big thing. Like it's going to be the future of transportation. Like they're going to build new roads and shit that only people they called it at the time. You'll have to ride it. What is it? I can't tell you. We don't know yet. It's the Segway and it sucks. The other thing is I've talked about this on
there was some
old shows.
There's some guys selling like roofing or some shit in my neighborhood, like going door to door on a Segway like a week ago. I wanted so bad to just throw something in front of him as he was wheeling up the street just to see him topple over.
He just would have done a pirouette around it.
Maybe. Anyway, what was
the other thing? I've talked about this before. I don't remember what show it was, but Spore for the PC by Will Wright. It was the follow-up to like one of the SimCity games. It's like, Spore is going to be so great. You're going to be able to make your character. They released the character builder thing before. So people were making like little space aliens with a bunch of penises all over it. And that was like, this is amazing. And then the game comes out and everybody just wanted to do the character creator because that was the best part of the game. I remember going to the store the day it gets released. I bought it. I was like, man, I'm almost going to call off work to play this. And I didn't. And then when I eventually got home, I should have called off work because work sucks. But as soon as I get home, I start playing it. Game's fucking bullshit. Fucking Will Wright.
Yeah. Fuck that game.
Yeah.
Fuck that game. Fuck this movie. Fuck some other stuff.
Fuck you.
Fuck you. Fuck me. Fuck the other guy. Yeah, I think you want to tack on before we wrap up on this one. We're coming up on movie runtime.
I know we are. We've dangerously close to movie runtime. Pre-edit.
Yeah. Well, we also had more to say about this movie than the movie had to say.
Yes. We gave it too much time. It wasted more of our time.
Yeah, well, sometimes it's therapeutic to get it all
The
out.
gift that keeps on giving.
You can't leave things bottled up for too long. In the meantime, what do we got going on? So would like for you to do some really cool things, like check out our website, is crap.town. You can leave us a message. If you want a piece of shit for us to watch, or if you know of a piece of shit that you want us to watch.
If you are a piece of shit and you want us to watch you.
Maybe. Let us know. Drop us a line there. You can give us feedback on there directly. And more than likely, if you suggest something, we'll probably get to it at some point. You can follow us, of course, on the You Run Podcast Network also. It's yourunpodcast.com. All of our previous episodes are also there. And you can find all the other great shows on the You Run Podcast Network. Then we are on social media all over the place. We are at Dewey Pod Monster. I don't know why, but Twitter really hates us over the last couple weeks, but that's fine. People seem to be showing up on other platforms, but if there's a social media that you would like to follow us on, search Dewey Pod Monster. You will probably find us, and you can tell us, how great In a Violent Nature was and how dumb and insensitive we are or something. Sean, what am I forgetting?
Yeah, I was going to say, if you want to get your question of the week answer read on this show, you should follow us on the social media that John mentioned. If you have opinions about A Violent Nature, which I want to always call A Most Violent Year for some reason, tell us about it. Like, we want to hear what you have to say. If you thought this movie was great and we're got our heads way up our asses, you're probably wrong, but you can tell us. We'd love to hear it. If you want to answer any of our polls or answer any of the other shit that we put on Spotify, you can check all that out on your podcast platform of choice. We leave show notes. All the things we talked about will be linked, either free or some kind of maybe Amazon link. But we tell you, we make sure to tell you where it is before you click it so you're not being bamboozled.
Duped.
I was duped. If you want to follow my Michigan craft beer misadventures, you can find me at youtube.drafttherapy.com, or you can follow me on all the social media networks at Draft Therapy.
Last but certainly not least, if you would like to watch a good camp slasher movie, you can come down to Batch Brewing in Corktown in Detroit and hang out with us and have a beer. We're going to be watching the movie The Burning this month. We just talked about it last week with our good friend Jordana. We're going to watch it in a bar. We're going to have some fun. A lot more happens in that movie, and there's some pretty good kills in that too. So if you would like to check that out, there'll be information on our social medias, but we'll be at Batch Brewing on the Thursday, the 25th of July. So we would love to come see you out there. Otherwise, If you don't come out, that's fine too. Whatever. We still love you. We'll see you next week. And we're going to talk about some other thing that is, you know what, I can say pretty confidently it's going to be better than what this movie was. Blah, 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 blah. The Ghost of Chris Farley. We'll see you next week. Cheers.
Give me a second. It pisses me off so bad. I'll be right back.
Go fight Freddy.
This is like the fighter walk out, the music you play, being all pumped up from being pissed off about a movie. Anyways,
I feel like I swallowed it like a fucking hair or fuzzball or something. I don't know what's going on with me. He's sitting behind this glass and we're just kind of sitting there, you know, ordering and whatnot. And all of a sudden he starts going, "Ah!" and just starts like beating the shit out of this like noodle dough and stretching it and punching it. And I'm like, I don't know what this guy's doing, but I'm totally amused with it and like very glad that this is where we wandered into to get food.